right, thank you, Amanda, and good morning, everyone. So I have 4 slides I'm going to go over. I'm just going to focus on a few of the key policy items in the NOFO. So I'll first talk about eligibility, partnerships and place of performance in just a little more detail. And then I'll talk about the letter of partnership intent, which is a key requirement for every application in the NOFO. Then I'll talk a little bit about the letters of commitment, and then the commercial transition plan. So starting with the eligibility, partnerships, and place of performance, Amanda already went over a lot of the information here, but just to give a little more detail on who's eligible for each research area, we want to encourage the submission of applications from as many different entities as possible that might be able to really propose a really creative and exciting application and a project that might accomplish something that maybe we didn't foresee initially. So the eligibility criteria for both research areas are quite open. You'll notice that we don't specifically say that any particular type of entity is eligible or ineligible. What we say is any applicant for either research area that is essentially capable of undertaking the core work of that research area is eligible to apply. So for example, for the first research area, the industry vertical solutions, the applicant must be capable of developing, integrating, and commercially selling and or deploying software solutions that leverage data and or features made accessible through Open RAN interfaces for use by vertical industry customers. So it doesn't really matter what type of entity you are, as long as you can demonstrate in your application materials that you have that capability and you're not an ineligible entity for national security reasons. And there's a section in the NOFO that describes who those ineligible entities are, then you can apply for this first research area. And as Amanda mentioned, every applicant for their first research area must partner with at least one entity in the value chain. So every application under the first research area has to demonstrate the fulfillment of 3 different functions. There's the software function, the vertical function, and the network function. Collectively, the applicant and their partner or partners must demonstrate that they fulfill each of these 3 functions. So the applicant is going to fulfill that first function, the software developer and integrator. The applicant and their partner or partners must demonstrate that they can also fulfill that vertical function and the network function. And the partnership has to be demonstrated through a letter of partnership intent. This is a really key part of any application submission. In the next slide, I'm going to go over a few more details related to that. But as far as the software function is concerned, that basically means that the application must have an entity that can design and integrate a software solution integrate a software solution that leverages the unique capabilities of Open RAN, such as access to data that you can't typically get through a full stack proprietary solution, or leveraging the unique capabilities like the RIC of an Open RAN architecture. The vertical function means there must be an entity that is providing the information about the needs and the requirements for that software solution. So essentially, while the vertical doesn't necessarily have to be a separate entity from the applicant, essentially this is going to be someone who's bringing the customer information, like what are the customer's needs for this software solution that is being developed. And then lastly, the network function, the solution that's being developed under the first research area has to be integrated and operating on a network. And Again, collectively, the applicant and their partner or multiple partners must demonstrate they can fulfill all three of these functions. For research area 2, integration automation solutions, again, the eligibility criteria is quite broad. Any entity that is capable of developing and commercially selling and or deploying RAN network integration automation prototypes is eligible to apply. As with research area 1, every applicant for research area 2 has to partner with, in this case, at least 3 separate entities. And that partnership must be demonstrated through a letter of partnership intent. Those 3 partners have to be different RAN suppliers, and it has to be a minimum of 3. It can be more than 3, but at least 3. As Amanda mentioned, the applicant and their partners can be based in the US or they can be based abroad. However, at least either the applicant or at least one of the partners has to have ultimate beneficial ownership in the US. And one important point that you see at the very bottom of this slide here is there, in the commercial transition plan that I'll talk about in just a few minutes, one of the requirements or one of the criteria that we're looking for is information about how the application, how the project is benefiting U.S. economic security. And NTIA will evaluate this criteria, an application's contribution to U.S. economic security, including work that is conducted in the U.S. in merit review. So applicants will be eligible for up to 7 points in merit review, depending on what they are demonstrating in this regard. So there's no place of performance requirement as far as taking place in the U.S. or overseas, but it's important to be aware that work conducted in the U.S. is going to be part of the criteria that will be evaluated as part of the contribution to U.S. economic security in merit review. Next slide, please. Just a little more detail on the letter of partnership intent. So the letter must be signed by senior representatives of the applicant and each partner. So this is going to be a single letter of partnership intent that the applicant and all of the partners are going to sign. And it's also important to know that NTIA will request a more formal demonstration of the partnership after the award. And more information about that will be provided at a future date. So you see here on the slide the key elements that we are looking for in a letter of partnership intent. First, we're looking for a brief explanation of the form of the partnership. Also, a demonstrable commercial need for the technology from the perspective of each partner. We are looking for resources invested by all partners or all parties to the partnership. And this is important because we would like to see a tangible commitment from each of the parties that are participating in this application. Also, a statement that the partners are committed to executing their roles, responsibilities, and/or commitments. The proportion of federal funding that would be utilized by the partners if applicable. And a point of contact at each partner organization for any questions that we may have. Partnerships will be evaluated in merit review. So this is very important. Applicants will be eligible for up to 5 points in merit review based on the criteria that you'll see in that section of the NOFO. And I have it right here as well, just kind of an overview. So the application materials should demonstrate that all parties are committed to project success. And one example of how you're demonstrating that could be the level of project resources that are committed by each partner and the depth of each partner's participation. Also, the application materials should demonstrate the partner's ability to work together to create a market-ready product and a commercial need for the solution. And it should demonstrate the ability of each partner to contribute to the development or demonstration of the prototype. Next slide, please. Letters of commitment are a little different. So letters of commitment are required for any partners or entities who will be integral to the success of the project. So that includes consultants, subrecipients, or subcontractors who will actively be executing the activities that are outlined in the technical proposal. However, the letter of partnership intent is distinct from the letter of commitment. So any entity that is signing on to that letter of partnership intent pursuant to the eligibility requirements does not have to submit a letter of commitment as well. This is only for those entities that are participating in the project that are not also signing on to that letter of partnership intent. So the letter of commitment includes several key elements. The entity's role and overall level of participation, the qualifications of the personnel who will be actively involved, share of federal funding for each entity, any voluntary committed cost share, a point of contact, of course, for any questions. And also, you'll notice that in the programmatic review section of the NOFO, applications are eligible to receive up to a 5% bonus, essentially, if they can demonstrate that a certain amount of the funding is going to a small business. So if the applicant is seeking that bonus, then any entities that are submitting a letter of commitment should indicate if the applicant is seeking that additional bonus in programmatic review based on the applicant, the entity that is submitting that letter of commitment. Also, just a couple of important points about sort of the administrative angle of the letter of commitment. They don't count towards the page limit of the technical proposal. They must be signed by a senior representative of the entity on the participating entity's letterhead. And as I mentioned, any entity that submits a letter of partnership intent does not need to also submit a letter of commitment. I'd also like to just note that it's important to explicitly identify in each letter of commitment whether the entity is a consultant, a subrecipient, or a subcontractor. This just saves time during the review process. Next slide, please. And then finally, the commercial transition plan. This is another critical element of any application. So every application must include a commercial transition plan that details the plan to commercialize and scale the product that's being developed after the period of performance. And every commercial transition plan must include several key elements that you see here: customer and in-market demand, an assessment of market position and key competitors, and this includes pricing strategy, market dynamics, sales capabilities. And for SRFA 1, there's a little bit of a distinction between SRFA 1 and SRFA 2 with respect to this criteria. So for SRFA 1, the assessment of market position and key competitors should include any plans to expand the customer base beyond the initial customer or industry vertical. For SRFA 2, it should include any plans to expand the customer base beyond a single network. The commercial transition plan also should include a deployment plan specifying possible timing to work from a working prototype to commercial scale deployment. It should also include a financial plan outlining the benefits across the value chain and the proposed revenue model. So for example, this could include revenue projections, cost savings, and licensing information. The commercial transition plan should also include an analysis of the project's commercial risks and the applicant's strategies for mitigating those. And then finally, as I mentioned before, this is where you'll find information about the demonstration of how the application is benefiting U.S. economic security that we're looking for. So in the commercial transition plan is where the applicant will describe the project's benefit to U.S. economic security. For example, there's a variety of ways this could be demonstrated. Some things that we might look for are contributions to job creation, U.S. economic productivity, contributions to U.S. software innovation or innovation in 5G or other areas. And there's a number of other ways this could be demonstrated as well. So I'll stop there. Those are just key of the policy overview points. I look forward to trying to answer any questions you may have as best as I can. But for now, I'll turn it over to Brad Hunt, who's our technical lead, to give a brief overview of the technical aspects of the NOFO. So thank you.